Hey all you Bonsai Time Podcast listeners, this is your host Kevin, coming at you with some new episode release. I know it's been a while, but we got something special for you. This interview will be released in a 3-part series, meaning that this month we'll have 3 episodes released with a continuation of each episode. So stay tuned and find out more about our guest, Dennis Makashima, learning about his journey in bonsai, his life, and his experience overall. We look forward to hearing what you have to think, say, feel, all the above about this episode and the way we're releasing it. And feel free to comment or like or subscribe. Remember, stay tuned and bonsai on.
Hey, my name is Dennis Makashima. I'm yesterday's news in bonsai, but that's all right. And I appreciate the opportunity to spew a few pearls of wisdom for the Bonsai Podcast here. Is it centered out of Columbus, Ohio?
Yep. Well, yeah, we're in Columbus. You're in Oakland, San Francisco?
Berkeley.
I'm in El Cerrito, which is in the San Francisco Bay Area.
Okay.
Which is across the bay from San Francisco.
Okay.
But thank you for the opportunity. And, my first and last podcast, I believe.
No problem.
We'll see about that.
But I can't emphasize enough. I'm faded glory.
Mm.
Mine, I used to be famous, but that's in my mind, so who knows.
When you were applying for your apprenticeship, did that have any particular notion about possibly finding more of your roots or your heritage? Is that why?
That was part of it.
Okay.
Geez,
and how did you apply for it at that time? There was no internet or anything that way.
I actually didn't apply, but I was recruited.
Okay.
And then they thought I represent all of you.
Mm-hmm.
I was like the one that they picked because not only was I able to, I had advanced quite a bit in my bonsai hobby because of who I hung around with and all the aggressive learning.
Mm-hmm.
They thought it was a novelty too to be Japanese American and go back to your country of ancestry. But so that was part of it. And I was really fortunate. Mitsuya, he housed me and Kathy.
Mm-hmm.
Live with the family. And then you do things Japanese, and then you realize too that, he's a very famous man. So, even when we went out to dinner with our clients,
mm-hmm.
this stuff is almost inedible to an American. That stuff is still moving on your plate. This is sashimi and stuff like that, but this is still I eat octopus and you eat that thing. It's really, the suction cups get stuck inside your throat.
Yep.
You get kind of sucking it up. Where's the hot dogs, man? That was part of it. And then I was an exception because the guy who's president at the time, John Planting,
mm-hmm.
He very smart man. And he worked with the consulate in Japan because you couldn't get on at that time a student visa.
Mm-hmm.
That applied to like universities and things like that. So this was an apprenticeship and it wasn't really, covered. Even though it's kind of the same thing. So you had to amend certain things, and then I got to go for 1 year.
Mm-hmm.
But then it became very inconvenient for my instructor, so I disbanded that. He had to take me to the American consulate.
Yep.
And in our area, every so many months you got to check in, every 3 months or whatever it was.
With a passport, right?
Yeah, it took a whole day to do that. So I'll just come from on a tourist visa from this point on, 30 days, 90 days at a time.
Mm-hmm.
So I went back and forth to Japan like 7 times during my apprenticeship.
Wow.
But it worked out because I'm a tree pruner and I didn't abandon all my clients. So I came back home. It was very exhausting because you have 3 months of intense work in Japan. You come back here and you 3 or 4 or 5 months of intense tree pruning to catch up.
Mm-hmm.
Plus I'm married. I had other kind of responsibilities.
Mm-hmm.
Then you go back to Japan. You go back to Japan tired. You come back from Japan tired.
Mm-hmm.
I hate it. It was like, but it wasn't easy. And plus, without income.
Yeah. Did you find what you were hoping to find when going to Japan, as far as your heritage or history of ancestry, or how you felt to be?
More than that, it wasn't so much the heritage.
Mm-hmm.
I just, I like to think I'm a people person. So just dealing with the common Japanese person, how they thought, And I soon learned to hang out in coffee shops.
Hmm.
People want to have a dialogue. They want to learn English, and I want to learn Japanese. So that was, you have to learn a lot about society, people, how they think.
Mm-hmm.
And then you got to bite your tongue sometimes. Is, well, we're really being progressive here. And women are really making advancements.
Mm-hmm.
There's no such thing as a minority there. It's a pretty homogenous society.
Right.
There are Koreans, Filipinos, and others working there, but they're really not incorporated into the society.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we need your work, but we don't want you to live or stay here.
Mm-hmm.
And don't procreate. So I'm sitting there and it's talk about how much the women have progressed. To me, it's like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like a great big quantum leap. But even in bonsai, you saw it. There's only a few women that do bonsai, especially in those days.
Mm-hmm.
And you see them in the magazines, like a novel. They're doing short, little tiny thing, mame and stuff, little accent plants. It's kind of like, I talk to these people. They're competent. They could do just what I was doing, but they were just relegated to a certain generality.
It was more like that cute idea. Oh, this is cute.
Novelty.
Yeah.
But I was a novelty, but after a while, I wasn't, because they want to interview me all the time, but it was never an interviewer.
Right.
So you get past like half a question. I learned the words for I don't know, and I'm an idiot. That's it, And so if I had been bilingual, I would have been pretty prominent in Japan.
Okay.
Because I was, from here, and then, but I couldn't grasp the basic conversation.
With your parents, speaking bilingual, with your parents run me again. Your parents were interred into camps. So when they came out, and if you don't want to answer this, no problem. But as far as history, were they less likely to speak Japanese to you because of what their experience was?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Fabric of my generation, especially urbanites.
Mm-hmm.
Emphasis was that, our parents, that's how we got screwed, because they didn't change religions. My parents were Buddhist, and they didn't
Mm-hmm.
Christianity just like that.
Right.
But, if there's any opportunity to speak Japanese, we won't.
Not even at home, or?
And they didn't require the kids to go to Japanese language schools, not like before World War II.
Right. Right.
I said we were not quite gangbangers, but all my friends, none of us were like, we're all like brain dead. We just got in trouble all the time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
As it turned out, all my friends are construction guys, teamsters. All the girls were smarter than us, so they went to college, but they never used a degree.
Mm.
Like my wife was a good example. She was a bookkeeper, but after 40 years at the same company, and then, doing well, being competent, always showing up, never sick, working hard,
Mm-hmm.
no mistakes. She was CFO for the company, a large corporation.
Mm-hmm.
And all her friends, they were secretaries and stuff at UC Berkeley or Public Health or the Department of DMV, and they just worked their ways into supervisor positions because they were there so long and they did such a good job.
Mm.
But no one went to school for a PhD in business or anything like that.
Right.
So all of us, we all succeeded. My friends were great construction guys, plumbers,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
did well. And I was like, I worked at a produce store. I got into pruning, and then all of a sudden I was, lo and behold, I started my own field. To me, I could see the future in urban living, smaller and smaller yards.
Mm-hmm.
Ohio might be still okay, but Midwest, I'm sure they got big lawns and stuff out there.
Yep. Much bigger than California and Seattle for sure.
Yeah, it's not as dense right now.
Yeah, places getting subdivided into another property and next to each other. No one wanted that big tree anymore.
Mm-hmm.
50s they were popular, but now like it's a curse. You got a redwood tree in your backyard. No one wants that thing except you.
Yeah.
Views, drop stuff all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
Crazy birds in there. People got trees. They take up all like magnolias, elms, and great big trees, or loquats. They drop fruit on your side and you don't want it.
Mm-hmm.
So I just started urban trees. Got to be smaller in scale to a small yard.
Mm-hmm.
And since they become more important, like Japanese maples, the aesthetics are very important.
So you started pruning before you did bonsai, correct?
6 months earlier.
Okay. How did you even start your aesthetics? I know Ryan's going to ask you more questions about this because he trained Milwaukee style pruning with Dan, and would love to hear differences with that. But did you just kind of create your own curriculum for your own self, or just trial and error? How did that come about?
All the above. I created my own stuff, but everybody thought I was a genius. I just observed trees. There's a bias on the tree. There's never no such thing as a symmetrical tree in landscape.
Right.
There's the wind, the sun, there's gravity.
Mm-hmm.
That's just, the only time I ever seen a symmetrical tree is a human being did it. So I'm going to prune the tree as if I take out these things, that's what nature would do, where branches actually drop off. So when I finish, I could take a 30-year tree away and still look like no one's been there. And that was kind of popularity. You can make it square, triangle, you can make it like a big bonsai, but I try to make a smaller version of what would naturally exist. And then I've had 105 apprentices in tree pruning.
Wow.
But the same thing, it's like observe.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, you're dealing with the public, so sometimes people are crazy and they want to pay you a lot of money, make it square.
Or the clients.
I mean, I'm not talking about, I worked on, my career gravitated toward historical trees. So I got a chance to go across the United States to different arboretums. And I consulted, I worked on a lot of World's Fair trees that came from 1915 Pan Pacific World's Fair. People think you're the keeper of the aesthetics. Great, great occupation for me. But there's the Milwaukee style, but there's what we do here in the Japanese garden stuff it's Japanesque. You go to Japan, I found there's a lot, it looked different. Of course, there's a more meticulousness there. You have wounds that you sharpen the edge with a knife or grafting knife instead of just making a sharp cut at the collar.
Mm-hmm.
But here, it's like we should be doing all this stuff, but until time catches up, budget's an issue.
Yeah.
People want to pay. So just get it close. And one day someone really wants to, or if someone buys that house and wants to go all the way out. But Japanese garden pruning is only good for Japanese gardens.
Right.
You can't prune a California coastline oak that way, or
right. They won't grow right.
And sometimes it just takes like 50 days to do it. You just got to get it done. And so mine was always, it might seem kind of brutal, but I always saw it first. I took out some structural branches that I knew were going to give me problems later on, and then I'd wait a year to the wound callus and then make the next level cuts, and in 5 years, I'm down to detail work. By then, I could talk to the clients, I get to know them very well, they know me, and then I keep the bill reasonable because I'm doing it incrementally. If I did it like 5 days work at one time, it's going to cost you 5 days work. If I do it I call it the big ugly to the little ugly. I told students, don't try to make the Mona Lisa the first time through. You'll probably kill the tree. Or too many wounds to callus. I said, just rough it out the first time. A little bit better the second time, and then you get to the semi-style stage, and then from there you can, instead of taking out a branch that's about the diameter of a baseball bat, you can take a branch out that's about the size of a quarter, get down to the size of a pencil. You're doing detail work, and if that's what you want, man, I got my Masakuni scissors, and I'll take all day on that.
Did you ever have a client that was giving you grief over removing the large branches or the amount of time that it was taking to make it into a beautiful Milwaukee? Or
me, never.
You sold them on your vision, is what I'm hearing.
I just talk my butt off. I tell them before we even start, these are the ground rules. This is what I got to do. Or I can't possibly achieve our goal unless we take out some big ones. And if you just chop a tree, then it's going to water sprout like crazy, and it's like quicksand. You never get over that.
Right.
But if I took the head off a pine, then what I do is I got to nurture the bottom branches for like 5 years, get them stronger. And then pretty soon, but I was whittling down the top all along the way, so I can weaken the zone of strength, and I strengthen the zone of weakness. Finally, I got so little left at the top, I can take it off. But in the room, I started a new lead, and then the bottom can support the life of the tree. Like a pine, they pickle down, you cut the head off, you cut off like 67% of the strength of the tree, and then the tree dies.
Right.
So this is common sense, logical thought. Figure out what you want to tell people. And then my mantra was, you keep me for 3 years, I got you.
That's awesome.
I mean, your life forever, boy. They'll be demanding that I do these next things. That's great, But that's been my career. My former students, they're very smart. They're nationally known now, but the thing is some started very shy, or some were not aggressive at all. When it's time to take that branch off, you got to take it off. You can't procrastinate. We cut it back in half. Next year, you got to come back and take it all the way off.
Right.
But you got to get that thing off the tree. Dictate what happens. You'll lose that bottom branch, and shame on you. You should have taken this off when you're supposed to. Or you get pines, and bottom dies, inside dies. You got this big old pom pom on a stick. Well, I can't do anything with that, but I can make it. The whole thing with big ugly little. I can make it a little less offensive to you if I could just, I could still work with this thing. I just can't make it beautiful. It won't be this big bulbous thing sitting on top of your tree. But,
when did you start teaching these classes at, I believe was it Lake Merritt College or
Merritt College?
Merritt College. Okay.
It's a community college.
Okay.
The horticulture department was really progressive. So I after about 3 years of my self pruning, I taught myself. It's a small community here in El Cerrito, and a lot of need for aesthetics of pruning. Big Japanese American population. That's how I started, but I didn't want to specialize in Japanese gardens.
Right.
I just had Japanese black pine and maple were prevalent all over the place, so you can't help but work on those, and it was lucrative. I worked on camellias, azaleas, rhododendrons, Pierre japonica, crab apples, flowering cherries, flowering plums. I like that. California natives. My specialty was anything that grows in the garden that could be pruned. I enjoyed it all, whether you have a Mediterranean style garden or English cottage garden. You show me where it's going to go, and I can prune your tree to fit in.
Wow, that's really cool.
Yeah, so then it's a long-term process, but it's enjoyable for everybody.
Right.
But I taught myself because I worked on a French tree, and he was a plumber, but he made a lot of money in those days, the crafts and trades. And I bought my house 50 years ago, and all my friends they fixed my air conditioning, my heating, they fixed my plumbing, my electricity. Those are all in the trades, and I had to reciprocate. So I was in a produce store. I don't think you want a box of apples or something. So friend had a sawzall working on his pine. I guess he bought a pretty nice house. I don't know what you're doing. I could do better than that. I have no idea what I'm doing, but I could do better than you. Pine. That person told somebody else. And within 1 year, I had about 35 accounts.
Wow.
And I started as no one starts this way. Because the pine I worked for my friend, it just so happened that his uncle was Toast Sabaramoto, a famous bonsai master and landscaper. I worked on his tree that, in front of my friend's house. And then he told the auto mechanic, hey, I'll fix your car. Can you work on my tree?
Wow.
He's the next city over, and he had this 300-year-old red pine in front of his house.
Wow.
Done in a Japanese garden style. It was beautiful. I didn't know it was a red pine. It was a pine. So this stuck out like a bad hairdo. I just cut it back, and nothing fancy. And then I found out that it was a historically significant tree. His father was a gardener, and he was given that tree from one of his clients in a couple cities over. He brought that tree to Berkeley. And 20 years later, they dug that tree up and moved it to the next city over. They moved. It was beautiful. It was like the Statue of Liberty of great red pines. Wow. And I found out later, it's you got to be careful with those things because they're cold climate, high mountain trees. You can't cut it like a Japanese black pine. But wow, that was my second job. The third job was this guy. Another guy had a Japanese black pine. And he was a friend of the auto mechanics, and I worked at his house, and I found out later this guy is so meticulous. I lucked out. I just had a wooden ladder, and I leave my tarps underneath the ground because I didn't want to clean things up. He says, well, I like the way you cleaned up. And I like the fact that you had the ladder and you didn't climb in a tree. If you work on a pine, you step on the bark and you ruin it.
Right.
So he said, you're hired. And I found out he was the most particular guy in the whole community. He said, you can work for this guy. You got to be good.
That's good.
It's all right. I pleased him. So again, that's how my career just took off. My first 5 trees were all really significant trees or significant clients.
Did you ever get your clients into bonsai at all? Or were they already appreciative of it? Yeah.
Well, one was trying. And then others were kind of dabbled in it. But they actually came up to me. I started a bonsai club there, so they came up and took some lessons, and I was rocking and rolling, so I had the key to the facility.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was like the golden egg. I had the goose.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, they could see that aesthetic pruning was starting to catch on. It was really popular. And so I started some classes up there, aesthetic pruning, and then they were like, it's a fee class. It's a Saturday, half a day, pay your $20. And I'll teach you about, one class was on maples, one was on pine, one was on conifers, one was on flowering trees and shrubs, one was on focal point pruning, one was on big picture pruning. You know, anything I can make up. I made up 14 classes on the spot. I just made it up. I had no outline. I just made it up.
Mm.
And all of a sudden these things start getting videotaped and everything else. But the department knew the normal people that take fee classes was like, they struggle at 15.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, 15 students to get the fee class going. So anything short of that, and a lot of times they were struggling to get to 15.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of the floor arrangement classes, a lot of other stuff. They all folded because they couldn't get the number. I had 75, 80 people in these classes.
Wow.
So they could see it coming. Hey, this is great, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So here's the key. Do what you want. Any
Mm.
class you want. So I got the big horticulture room. I had my workshop there. I was very fortunate. Some very prominent bonsai people, kind of like my first students, but they go right by you. This guy Boone, you're out Montequita V Park.
Yeah, Boone. Yeah.
Well, he was, and, you know, I think I gave him his bonsai basics lessons. Him and his partner,
Mm.
his partner, Morton Wellhaven. This guy Jim Gremel, he was a vendor, very good bonsaiist. But they all took the workshops.
Mm.
You know, it's kind of like you can see that they're better than you, even though I'm an instructor.
Yeah.
It's, you know, I just kept order in the room, but you know, they just couldn't out BS me. I had answers to their question, and I had, you know, I made it up. Anyway, that's kind of like how I got started at Merritt. They asked me if I'm taking classes there, because I had jumped ahead of horticulture. I just pruned trees. I thought I needed to go back and learn something about, you know, arboriculture.
Mm-hmm.
So I took classes. They said they heard of me, and can I teach classes? Sure. That's how I got started. You know, 6 months later, that's how I met Masa Mizumi at a family function, and it was like I started bonsai. And they're two parallel things. They're both 40 years. And then I retired from pruning about 5 years ago.
Okay.
And then since I donated my collection, that was last year, and I consider that the end of my bonsai career.
How was that for you? I know there are certain people now who are retiring from the hobby or their lifestyle, as they choose to claim. And they said it's some of the hardest things they've ever done, because it's like their children are leaving home. They may keep a few around just to have that resonation, you know, the resonance of like, oh, I'm still here. How was that for you? Was it like a sigh of relief, like, oh, I can just give it on to someone else and kind of breathe and be more time available for other things? Or, you know,
maybe 4 or 5 things that people would say, but it was like none applied to me. I had a plan years ago. When does it end? You know, like these old timers, I mean, they're barely hanging on. The trees are barely hanging on, or they die and the family inherits them, and the plants die.
Mm-hmm.
I said, I don't want that. So I figured when I started, I figured 40 years is a good time.
Right.
So I worked hard to get my collection at its prime.
Mm-hmm.
Best I can do. You know, if you get one of these things and that's it, you know, I'm finished with this tree. Even though others think that, you know, they can improve it by contemporizing it. But to me, the concept, the art, what I was trying to achieve, I did. So that's when I always get out on top. I never hang around. If I was a president of the Federation, 1 term only, you know, people who want to do good, hang on for a 2nd term, they always screw up. Or these athletes, you know, they should have retired like last year.
Mm-hmm.
They're fools now.
Leave on the high note.
Yeah, well, of course, the money, they're offering you millions of dollars. It might be different.
Yeah.
I don't mind, but I don't want to be on. You know, I hope these people don't be on the front stage. You still gonna make a difference, but get out. And so I never want to hang around. I don't want that door slamming on my butt. So I decided this is the height I could do it, and I got a lot of actually in Japanese American community fame and glory from donating my trees. They said I got into it for pure reasons.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, you know, someone could have put things on the internet and got me a lot of money for that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But that wasn't I was lucky. I just kept my wife working for a long time. So we're independently wealthy here. She didn't work tonight, but unfortunately. But do you miss them? No, it's like the lessons I got from bonsai, it's internal.
Mm-hmm.
I understood the lessons of each tree and what they're trying to do and the importance of life and taking care of and the duty and obligations.
Mm-hmm.
I traveled the world, but I had to make sure my plants are watered.
Mm-hmm.
And when I started all over, in 1990, 91, 92, when I went to Japan, I got rid of all my plants that I had.
Mm.
I'm not going to be home. Who's going to take care of them? Not my wife.
That's a good point.
So I started all over when I came back.
Mm.
That's good because you can start all over with new eyes. So as a tree pruner, I got a lot of urban collecting. People have, they want that old juniper there. They want a azalea. Oh, you dig it up, I'll pay for it. Oh, they pay me to dig up the plant. Oh, okay, I'll do it.
That's the best deal.
I dug up thousands of plants, very.
That's what we do in Ohio. And I have a landscape and pruning business, and Ryan does some pruning and things on the side as well. And we find a lot of material from yards. Like,
You get this, and then like, geez, I'll wait to get you 1 gallon of azalea, put over, look at the flowers.
Sell them on the flowers every time.
I got a tree in Japan. It's Ritsuin Park. It's a very famous tourist park on Shikoku Island, in the city of Takamatsu. There's like 3 big tourist gardens in Japan: Korakuen, Okayama, Kenroku-en, and Kanazawa, and then Ritsuin in Takamatsu. And I didn't know they had sister garden relationships. I know California and Japan got sister city relationships.
Right.
But so the Ritsuin Park wanted to exchange with the Huntington.
Oh, wow.
So the Huntington, they were going to send to the Huntington this really nice Shinpaku juniper, I don't know, from the mountains and historically significant. And they wanted from the Huntington a camellia. Camellia japonica, what do you think japonica means? It comes from Japan. Why would you want a camellia that was born in California? It's a variety that you already know. And then Ted Matson, a good friend of mine, and he was a curator of the collection down there. They didn't have anything down in Southern California. So he says, you got some Northern California, I know you guys have good camellias. And no one got camellias there. But I had one of my former clients, he was a camellia fancier. But he wanted to show his own, he had a rare flower, one kind of a reddish thing. And he didn't win the prize. So he said, get this tree out of here, the landscape tree. I don't want it. So I dug it up. It took 20 years to shorten it. It was like 5 feet tall to get it down to 1 foot tall.
Oh, wow.
Out of it. But it was a fun process. It was free.
Right.
It was like, I told Ted, look, I got one, but you can't send it to Japan. They would just throw this thing against the wall. It'd be so distant. But he said, well, I'll just send it to you anyway. You decide. So finally, he decided to send it to Japan, and they liked it so much that it's on display there.
Wow.
I got a camellia on display there.
That's amazing.
I got pine. I got plants all over the place. I got one, not Ohio, but in Minnesota. I got a boxwood there.
Okay.
Como Conservatory, but I was lucky. My career, I got to pass along trees. But also, again, it's not the physicality of a tree in my yard. If I finally made the complete donation of about 1,000 plants. So I would say 700 be classified as a bonsai.
Okay.
I would say 200 were like almost there. There are 2 more years of seasoning. And then I had like 200 or 300 plants that I actually use my front yard as a growing ground.
Oh, wow.
Because I did so many workshops, you need 10, 11 per workshop. So I had every year I'd be digging up 100 plants in front, but every year I had some that were in the ground every one was in the ground no more than a year. I just pick it up, turn it around, cut the root, do some pruning on the circumference of the canopy, but with in mind that it's going to be a workshop. And then I had like some in the ground for 1 year, 2 years, and I took the whole row out that was in there for basically a 10-year process. I had cuttings going, so I just stuck in from a 1 gallon can, put it back in those slots. Every year, I was taking out and replenishing. So I had pines, heavy black pines and Shinpaku junipers going in the front.
Wow.
But I thought, I kept the same height, looked like a ground cover.
Okay, smart.
Look behind, you can see all the trunks and stuff. I thought it was pretty slick.
Mm.
I didn't want them in my yard, too much room. I mean, they take up too much space.
Right.
That was like everything's gone. There's nothing, basically nothing alive in my yard now.
Wow.
So you don't get any withdrawal symptoms like craving to prune a tree or dig a tree these days now that you gave away all your trees?
Not at all. I mean, I'm very not ambitious, but I'm always moving on to the next thing.
Mm.
I like to go all out, complete the mission, and get out. But I know in this case, you're talking about the Japanese American legacy or history of bonsai in the United States. Maybe maybe you've interviewed other people. Maybe my conception of bonsai starting in California is wrong. I don't know. But I knew, a friend of mine, his name is Toichi Demoto. He died like 10 years ago, but he was like 100 years old. Wow. He had an old nursery in Hayward, California, nearby. But his father had a nursery in Oakland, 1990. Amazing, Japanese guy with a nursery. And but his place was famous because at the turn of the century, it was agricultural law starting to set in. So they could really import these things as easily. So that for the World's Fair, Japan sent a lot of trees to Mr. Demoto's father's nursery. One quarantine thing, but to keep them so that they will beat the import regulations.
Right.
So trees, so they did exist. And have you heard of a guy named Dr. Tom Elias from Washington D.C.? Anybody?
Maybe.
He was
refresh our memory.
Whole arboretum. He wasn't just in charge of the bonsai thing.
Okay.
He wanted to meet some of the old timers. He did a little book or something on history of bonsai in the United States. But again, it was kind of like segmented to like Brooklyn and things, with people that brought things in, but it wasn't like a mass movement or hobby. So he asked my friend Hideko to set up a meeting. So it was like this guy Pizza Gawara, Toichi Demoto, Mitsumohara, Tosawa. I was like I was like the fly on the wall. I was there, but because I knew Toichi, so I helped Hideko set up that part. And they just talked about bonsai in the old days. I was very lucky to hear a lot of these things. And one thing, two regrets. This thing I cannot find. I know it's still somewhere in the house, but it's like a little brochure from the Yokohama Trading Company.
Oh, wow.
1890 something. They show you pictures for bonsais for sale. But it wasn't a photograph, it was a watercolor drawing. Wow. I can't find anything, but Toichi gave it to me. And, it's like what happens. A lot of this is all stuff, and dump a lot of stuff. Can I have that? And the other thing I can't find, my army dog tags. I don't know what happened to those things. I know I throw them away, but wanted to keep those. But, so these old timers, I got to, again, Toichi had this thing. One of the people that I learned a lesson, he said that you want to prune a deciduous tree, especially with the emphasis on the winter silhouette. He had his workshop and he had like a backlight, a sheet and a backlight. And he said, you put the tree there, you can see it's crystal clear, all the little twigs, the ramification on the tree. Right. So I prune a lot of my deciduous trees close to dusk. And all the little twigs, they just stand out, and it's easy to identify each one and prune the way you feel the tree want to be interpreted. So he taught me that. From a guy named Hiroshi Suzuki in San Francisco. He had his own little workshop in his garage, and we just get drunker than a skunk. He's like,
you make the best cuts.
Old guys in bourbon, bourbon Coke, CC and 7, ripped. I sought him out because he was a humble man. I'm not humble, but I wanted to understand what the character is all about. So I decided to spend time with a humble man. I mean, he was great, but he never told you he was great. But he was a Northern California fixture, and Mitsumohara was like a plant scientist. He was a Japanese gardener in San Mateo that he was the curator of, and it became like nationally known.
Wow.
Because it was a county job, but he spent like 16 hours a day there. It was like it was his passion. He moved like maybe about 6 blocks away from the place. But he had the San Mateo Bonsai Club, and then every exhibition was based on education. So it was very interesting, very sophisticated thing, and you learn a lot just by it. listening to the man.
That sounds
Funny guy too. When you found out his history, he was a soldier in the Imperial Army in Japan in World War II.
Whoa.
He was in Manchuria or something. Like that. Dang, he was an engineer, but came over here and he was a gardener. But that's part of. It's important for me to. This is it. I mean, this is actually after. It's like the chocolate after the dessert after dinner. This is the last time I'll probably talk about this stuff. One is no one cares. Number two is I'm out of it. If you want to know something about each one of these people while I knew them, that's great. And if you want to know about their philosophy, I can't tell you that.
Right.
Mr. O'Mahara, I helped him with a lot of his classes. They wanted me to interpret for him. He was speaking English. He just had a kind of a speech impediment. You can't, people just shut off. If they hear some accents like that, they just shut off. And,
right.
Here I'm interpreting his English. I had a chance to work closely with these people. Here, Hirao, I helped him maybe about 30 times on his workshops. We had like 30 assistants. We're all there. He just got everybody all, climbing over each other. But it's very interesting. I learned something with each person. Like Harry, he had to wire from this branch to that branch. And he'd tell you wire, I wire him, and he would cut the branch off that, the anchoring branch with the wire. He'd cut that thing off. And he'd look at this one, it's not anchored. He'd look at what the hell I do? You just cut this branch off. So I learned to, take that wire and hook it onto a dead piece. Maybe once, so that, you can cut the branches off. Everybody has their nuances. And there's, have you heard of Hideko Mitaxis?
What's that?
Oh, man. Well, she's still alive. She's in the 90s, but she's great. One of the very few Renaissance people that I ever met. John Naka, Hideko Mitaxis. I didn't meet Home Isayama, but I know of him. But Hideko was, she was a master at 4 different Japanese artistic disciplines.
Wow.
Bonsai master, a Suiseki master, Ikinobu master, and she was also a master at Tokonoma display.
Wow.
And then she became really important because all the Japanese masters, when they came here, they needed an interpreter. But bilingual, but she's real funny. So the entertainment factor. So sometimes you don't want the direct interpretation. It's just like, but she was a bonsai person, so she knew what the person was trying to do. Sometimes we had interpreters, but then they couldn't interpret the horticulture part. They were just interpreters. So I had a chance to, I spent 40 years. She lives in Marin County, amongst the redwoods. But she you meet these people and what they can do. Have you heard of Mr. Morimai from Japan?
I have, yeah.
Big purveyor of Japanese bonsai tools, antiquity. Every time he comes here, he always visits Hideko. I'm always asked to pick him up. Hideko put him up in a hotel, he and his wife, and then I would pick him up and go to Hideko's for a rack of lamb dinner. But I was leery the first time because I can't speak Japanese, and but, I found out he knew just enough English, so we had a conversation. But he is a real expert on Tokonoma display, the tatami room. So just before dinner, you could smell the rack of lamb. Oh my God, it's starving. And then Mr. Morimai, he sat there. He explained how to, as far as a gracious gesture for dinner. He says, "I'm gonna explain how to enter the tatami room." So he says, "This is how you open the door. You got to open it partially first and look in and see if there's any superiors in the room. Superiors, and you can walk in. You almost have to crawl in the room. If it's like us three, then you can stand up tall as you want. But he went through this thing for like 15 minutes, 20 minutes, half hour. Then he went to the tokonoma and the scroll, accent piece, and all this other stuff, the meaning of the scroll. You got like a harvest moon, you got a full moon with a snow goose going through it, or a winter scene, or this is a summer scene. He talked for an hour.
Wow.
You learn a lot. It's like you could never get that kind of knowledge. He just talked, and I was hungry and heck, man. You learn a lot. But that's the people you hang around with. So I'm very fortunate to hang around with not only the top Japanese professionals, but also, the Japanese American legacy. And I knew the 1950s thing because my father was alive. There's a shogatsu tradition. So in Japan, they got the same thing. New Year's celebration, everybody stops work, they go travel someplace, see family.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we got that same thing here. But my father, we all lived in the same close area, within blocks of each other. All the other gardeners, we go to their places the women took a beating.
Hmm.
They had to cook all the food and host everybody, and all the guys go and get drunk over here, get drunk over there. So I went to different yards, and I caught hell. And me and my friends, we're all like 7 years old, playing football in the backyard,
Mm-hmm.
balls and knocking these bonsais off the shelf. This is not too good for other people. Well, but that's my first experience with bonsai. I hated plants, but that's just the community you grew up in.
Did your dad practice or do anything? No?
It wasn't like he worked and then hated it. I mean, we had some stuff around the garden and stuff like that. And my mom liked working in the garden too.
Mm-hmm.
But he was more of a. We had a typical Berkeley house in those days with big houses, big rooms, not many. Mm-hmm. So the living room was big, and the dining room was big, and a big old sliding door between it. Hardwood floors. So my siblings, my older brothers and sisters, they used to have dances there. Open the door, a big old dance hall. It was like 6 of us, and we only had 2 rooms. But the rest was just all big rooms, but no bedrooms. So finally, my father built a room down in the basement. An old basement, got a big old duct work in there and stuff, and he made it a poker room.
Mm-hmm.
So we were still sleeping all together in a small room, but there was a poker room downstairs. So he liked poker, and he liked fishing at the pier.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to complain. Fishing at the pier was like these perch and goofy fish that you don't even want.
Right.
I wanted a hot dog or a hamburger. I realized I ain't complaining a lot. I'm not gonna eat this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
He was on a supplement dinner.
Mm-hmm.
We were poor, but that's why to this day I still have a hard time eating, a lot of fish.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, Japan, you change, you eat.
Right.
Even if it's still moving or whatever.
You're hungry.
I don't like things that move, and I don't like the texture, the slimy stuff.
Mm.
Yeah, some of the stuff is just, to me, gross. Oh well, but I lived that era.
Mm.
But it's, again, I have to clarify. This is just what I heard from some people and my interpretation of it. Have you heard that bonsai was prevalent in some other places in the United States before 1950?
No, I haven't. Ryan, what about you?
Yeah, the only thing that I'm not sure of is the timeline of when exactly Yoshimura started in New York versus when exactly it started with the California Masters.
Yeah, I'm sure the California Masters predated Yoshimura in California.
Okay.
He came from Japan,
Yuji
Yoshimura. So he must, obviously was famous there. But his practice in Japan it predates bonsai here, but until he got to the United States in California, and then he was a friend of Tosh Sawamaru. And Tosh was very prominent at the time, and he was introducing Yuji to this area before he went to New York. But he still considered Yuji Yoshimura. We all thought it was like somebody from Japan. But he was obviously very skilled, very qualified, but I don't think he did any workshops, or very few here. He was kind of passing through. He helped on a couple of World's Fair trees that I know of. And then, but no one ever told me that they took a lesson from him, or those days there was no convention or something. There was never a headliner someplace.
Right. That is the thing that's interesting that you bring it up, because me being from Oregon and growing up in my bonsai, development in that kind of scene where there's like Ryan Neal and all those Michael Hagedorns, and then Ryan studying with Dan Robinson, and then coming to the Midwest and feeling the both sides, not competing with each other, but also not fighting with each other. But there's that resonance of like what was here before, what was here then. Did you feel that when you came and visited Ohio? Did you feel that certain influence from maybe East Coast more because it's closer, or is there a just difference of person that you're working with?
Yeah, I I was there for very specific reasons. So I had specialties, and then I don't think anybody challenged me as far as my specialty.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't say, well, this is it. Or Republicans are better than Democrats, or Democrats are better than Republicans. I never said that this is what you should do. I said, this is what I do in California.
Yeah.
Or you take a plant that's kind of used in Japan, or this is what they do in Japan, and why they do this technique versus that technique. But I was always careful, and I'd say, this is what you should do in Ohio.
Mm.
Asked, I said, well, given that, and I was always like, I first went to Pennsylvania. I did, I knew Chase, and I knew, anybody from the Delaware area? There was, Jack Billett and Dory Froning, the old timers on the East Coast, and Shoheen people.
Okay. No, I've never, I'm sure Chase has probably mentioned them before in passing, but.
They were involved in this, in Kennett Square. There was a Longwood Gardens. It was like old DuPont estate, but they have a bonsai collection. So I was there to work on that with them. But I was always I was very honored with the opportunity to not be challenged. But I was always careful saying, I ain't the answer. This is what I do and my interpretation. And you saw something about me, or you came to California and saw me. I did a lot of things at the National Arboretum in DC.
Nice.
So but that's when Warren Hill was the curator there.
Yeah.
But I was involved, and but again, part of it just being personable. Chase is a good old guy. Speedo gave me a nice sweatshirt from Columbia. I wore that thing around, and I got like a zillion pullover shirts and T-shirts from different clubs, and I like free. That's fine. I wear them.
Best price.
But I never got busted as far as what a hunk of crap you're talking about. I wasn't that close to Dan Robinson at first. Still not, but it was just when I was at the Pacific Northwest Convention, and they gave me carte blanche. So I gave like 2 workshops, a demo, and a discussion. Like all along this way, old style bonsai, and you invite Dan Robinson and others to come participate. They appreciate that. It wasn't like I'm the one that's gonna critique you. You just say what you got to say, free country, and then leave it at that. And didn't he get his first influences from Korea?
Yeah, when he was in, I think he was drafted into the army there too, maybe around the same time as Vietnam.
Yeah, because that's how I understand it. And then he had a friend that lived in San Francisco, and then she asked Dan for one of his pines, and he graciously gave her a pine. So it was very interesting. It was a Korean black pine. But I never went to his place. When I was in Washington, I went to Seattle several times, but I also went to the 2 times I did bonsai presentations in a convention was in Spokane.
Okay.
Oh, that's quite far. Yeah.
I was gonna say.
And just to get there, I made a big mistake. I walked the I-5 up the coast all the time. Just up the eastern side of Oregon, the eastern side of Washington. Big mistake, man. This high desert is. After 5 minutes, I got another 5 more hours to try to this stuff.
It's quite different.
Washington, there's no motels. They're all like on the Columbia River or something like that.
Yep.
It's like going up, there's nothing there, and it's like it got to be like 2 o'clock in the morning. I had to stop on the road sleeper, so I just pushed on for another hour and get to Spokane. It was agonizing when you're just so tired. And all by myself out there. I made it. I think when I was there, another guy that was on the program was Walter Paul from Germany.
Yeah,
really?
Yeah.
I tore him up because he was severely jet lagged. So he couldn't function that well in his demo, man. I did real good on mine. Because a lot of times, like in Texas, I was on the program with Mark Nolanders. So different places you get to meet everybody because you're on the same program. Some of these people are just. When I did something in Spain, and it was all the European artists were there, all just great technicians.
Right.
My perspective was where's the no knock on them really, but I just thought, where's the uniqueness in your tree? Where's the heart? What's the story?
Their personality, right?
Yeah, and then we were talking about answering questions and stuff and learning. In Europe at that time, you were not basically encouraged to ask questions during a demo. In fact, some of the people actually turned their back on you. They work on their tree, the audience is there, and after about a half hour, everybody leaves and comes back.
Wow.
I was one of the headliners for the European Bonsai Convention. It was in Toledo, Spain. And I think I set the precedent. The first time I had like that trip that from hell. It took me 36 hours to get there.
Wow.
And I got stuck in airplanes, off airports, on the tarmac. So I left from San Francisco, and my layover was in Miami. And I was over the Gulf, and everything was going great, And then the plane started to circle around the Gulf. I said, wow, we got this thing from Miami. The lightning had knocked out the radar. So holding pattern for a while. And so after 3 hours, like I said, we're running out of fuel. No fuel, and there's no place to land, and so we finally, this really obscure airport in Georgia, but they can hold a jet. We couldn't land in Miami. In Atlanta, it was just inundated with too much traffic, so we sat there, we landed on the tarmac, and we stayed there for 3 hours in the plane.
Wow.
We couldn't get into a gate because they're all taken by planes that couldn't get to Miami. And then we finally get to the airport. You got to wait another 5 hours there. There was no connecting flight. Finally got to Miami, and then there's a zillion people waiting in line. And then, it was like 2 a.m. and finally got to the front. It's just there's no flight. We had to put you on holdover for the next day. 24 hours later. Not holdover, but so I can't even get a guaranteed ticket.
Wow.
You just, depends on how many people, how many slots are left for that flight. The flight is already booked, So, it was at 2 a.m, and then so I need a hotel room. And said, well, we can't pay for it because it was an act of God. It was lightning that hit it. I wasted an hour in line. And then you go, in every lobby, you get these little pictures of hotels and stuff that they suggest, and this is booked all the way across the one left. I probably got the last room. Well, that's great. Went there and found out it was the biggest ghetto area in Miami, boy. So, I'm on standby. So I said, wow, I better go back to the airport. And it's like, I got like 2 hours, just enough to shower. Went back to the airport, waited another 10 hours.
Wow.
Have you heard of a guy named Felix Rivera? He's a
Yeah.
No.
He died, but he lived about maybe a mile away from me. So we went to Spain together.
Okay.
He was a Suiseki part, and I was the bonsai part. I got the screws, and you get there, and then all the European masters got their first choices. It was 18 guys. So they got nice collected stuff, and the last 5 left, man, they were so ugly. I said, this is terrible. I can't help but fail. I got one was like a stick, 5 sticks like that. Okay, that thing. I thought I did good. I fast thinking. I got these 3 guys to assist me. I could just tell by the conversation that they're like almost the next day. The wannabes. They're like the next level, but they haven't made the big time yet. So you guys want to be on stage with me and assist me? Oh, yeah. So they did the work. I did the talking, and I tried to later on. This is where the negative space is going to be, and this is maybe 10 years will look like that. And these guys were happy. They got the photo out. I was happy because they did the work.
Good deal for everybody.
Breakfast before we went. They gave me the Saturday slot. You think it's, like in convention Saturday is the primo slot.
Right.
But I found out, my time was siesta time. So everybody's sleeping, I'm doing my demo. Gave me the slot. But, I got this one guy at breakfast in an old Spanish hotel, like 200 years old place. I noticed, I saw his picture in some magazines from before. So I sat with him. And he was a very horticulturally aware guy. So I started talking to him about horticulture issues. And And then lo and behold, he was like my shield, and at the demonstration, he asked some questions. And I'm like, oh man, this guy asked questions. So other people start asking questions. You find out the will to learn is universal.
Mm-hmm.
So he asked questions. Other people start asking. So people start coming back in the room. Carrying on the dialogue. So you find out if you do that, then no one cares what the final product looks like. The bonsai demonstration.
It's interesting.
Got their lessons, and then this guy, one young guy asked a lot of questions. He was a doctor from the Basque area. He must have been like his late 20s. But he was very knowledgeable in English language. So he said, can I go to the exhibit and look at his tree? Because, critiques weren't done in those days.
Mm-hmm.
So I went there and I critiqued his tree. And I turned around, there was like 15 people standing behind us. So it was like, then they asked me to critique their tree. And so I started two things, to ask questions in the demo. And if you want a tree critiqued, I'll do it for you. I said, I can't critique anybody else if you're unless they're here.
Mm-hmm.
But I could talk to you about yours.
Mm-hmm.
So that night, man, it was the banquet was at 11 o'clock, ended at 1 in the morning, and then we had a walking tour of Toledo from 1 to 3. Because the head of the convention, he was a prominent architect, and he was involved in restoring a lot of the old buildings there. So he took us inside and showed us the inside stuff, and at 3 o'clock they finished, and these young guys said, "Let's go party." All the bars opened, till like 6, 7 o'clock in the morning. All right, I didn't sleep one iota for 3 days. Well, I slept good on the way home, boy.
Oh yeah.
But I was, I was going to bail out. I was in Miami. If I got to wait another day and I can't even get guaranteed a plane, I may not even get there in time. It'll be over.
Mm-hmm.
Or we'll hold the convention over 1 or 2 more extra days until you get there. Yeah, so I didn't hang out with these contemporary artists. They were all really good. But, as far as the contemporary work or the detail work, they're way out of my league. But to me, it looked like kind of duplications of each other. All the trees started looking the same.
Mm-hmm.
So I hung out with these young guys. And then in Miami, I was going to come home. I called them. They said, "Oh, no, come on down." So then when I was going to go home, I looked for my luggage. I could actually see it. It was in the baggage room, but it had a big net over the luggage.
Mm-hmm.
I can see my bags right there. So I'm going to go back to San Francisco. Can I get my bag out of here? No, you can't. He said, "That thing has a tag to Spain."
Wow.
So the bag's going to go to Spain. Whether you go or not, your bag's going to go to Spain. I said, "Right there. Can I just grab the sucker?" So I would have had to the bag go to Spain, come back to Miami, and come back to San Francisco. It might have been like a month before I got it. But luckily, I went to Spain and it turned out to be one of the best experiences I ever had.
Serendipity, right? Learn through those experiences.
This is why me?
I think at the beginning you mentioned this idea of fate kind of getting you into trees and gardening, and then it seems like it may have played in there too.
Yeah, all my life. I wrote my autobiographical sketch. It's just how things happen. One in a trillion instances that happened to me.
Mm-hmm.
Or how I met. That first pine tree I worked. It was Tosawa Maru's nephews.
Mm-hmm.
Masi Wazumi just walked in the wrong room. Talk about bonsai.
Right.
I was in the right place at the right time, and part of that was planning. As I was the president of the Bonsai Federation at the right time, crucial moment.
Mm-hmm.
I had the plan. I had all the problems of the federation solved during my 4 years of training as first and second vice president.
Mm-hmm.
I just never completed it until my term. I want to get the credit for it. I did this, and wow, I looked to take credit for it. So as soon as I became president, I hit the ground running. I solved like 5 or 6 big issues. And at that time, it was almost a big war about our collections in North and South.
Wow.
The funding,
Yeah.
Some people, they felt funding too much money to the Northern collection. And then we had a curator there, but he was also president of the Golden State Bonsai Federation at the time. So it was like a lot of course, he's going to lobby for the Northern California issues. But Southern California, going ballistic. But knowing them all, and then you work out a solution or a compromise. Because the two collections had different financial needs. Southern California one is involved, it's partners with the Huntington. So the Huntington paid, they paid for all the utilities. It's their land. They got their own volunteers. But your committed to having to put in X amount of dollars into our endowment fund. So we show good faith that we, with Huntington to outlay that money, we're here for sure.
Mhm.
That money, we built it from scratch.
Wow.
Yeah, construction costs, we had a lot of other stuff. So immediately we needed the money for, Oakland before we needed for the Huntington, but, that don't play well if everybody's paying dues and 2/3 go here.
Right.
So the
Right.
compromise, hey, this first year we'll give you 25,000 for Oakland and 15,000 for the Huntington. And
Wow.
next year I'll reverse it since I'm president for 2 years. So okay, and they, what you do is you got a meeting, and then a board meeting was over the weekend,
Mm.
Saturday night, Sunday, and all hell broke. I had all the business done Saturday that I could.
Mhm.
4 to 5 before we closed, about the issue of the collections and the funding. I mean, it's like people were throwing knives at each other. I said, well, we get it out. And we got, you got to start the conversation at 5 because we got the dinner coming. And then that night I talked to all the players, in the rooms and stuff. And, just understand, I know you're fired up, but it's like, this is the solution.
Mm.
Got everybody to agree. So next morning, all in favor, everybody say,
Get me out of here.
But again, I wanted to be the president at that time for the Japanese American issue, but I knew it was the time where it's time to let go. It's over.
Mhm.
So I'm not going to badger anybody else. Plus, if you want to do this style of bonsai, I said, just don't talk bad about the old timers.
Right.
It's just no class. Some guys are just crude, or they weren't the John Knox kind of guys, but they fit into this one generation. So created this thing called the Circle Sensei Award.
Mm.
We picked out all the prominent teachers, and like every convention, we honored maybe 3 to 5.
Mm-hmm.
So here's the white horse. Get on it. The big award.
Mm-hmm.
Just see you later. These guys all in their late 80s, 90s. It's just, here's the award, recognition statewide for you. And then just kind of like let the next generation take over.
Mm.
This is, you've done your job, and I'll put you in a history book.
Mm-hmm.
And Bonsai Basics, I'll make you, an honorary teacher of the advanced people.
Mm-hmm.
So teaching basics to beginners is beneath you.
Mm.
That was, okay. Well, just figure out the compromises, and so I was involved in all these programs for a reason. And how can you get everybody unified in a state that's 87 clubs? I figured Bonsai Basics was one.
Mm-hmm.
Every club has the same need, and then the next one was, I want the history of every club. We've only been in business for 1 year. So that's okay. That's the best time to get the history. You're right there.
Right.
Who's the first teacher? Where'd you meet? Who was the first original members? Some people, these smaller clubs, there will be books.
Mm-hmm.
The big clubs, they sent out like a 1-page thing. It's woefully inadequate.
Mm-hmm.
It was like a waste of their time. And we're famous. We don't have to write this thing down. So, I said, I'm gonna collect all this stuff, and I created an archive at the Huntington and just store it there. And one day, you guys want to write a book about this stuff? It's all the information is there.
That's perfect. Yeah.
So again, a lot of the history stuff about the Japanese Americans, I have some there.
Right.
So for the Fuji Bonsai Club, I had some original records.
Mm-hmm.
So they're all mildew and silverfish, but I just stored them at the Huntington, and it's the Huntington Library and Gardens. The library part is the archival library.
Okay.
So they're used to doing the Dead Sea Scrolls and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
I asked the guy in charge of the horticulture department areas, can you give me an appointment with somebody at the library in the archival division, like a student or somebody, a trainee, just so I know what to do with my files, archival paper, whatever. And I went there for the appointment, and the head archivist actually talked to me. I said, I don't need this guy, I'm just talking about these old things like silverfish on it, mold.
Yeah.
But, he didn't throw me out. He gave me like 10 minutes of his time. It was cool. So we have an archive if you need if anybody wants to do a more detailed thing on the Golden State Bonsai Federation, it's all there.
That's great to know. Yeah, I did not know that there was that application in regards to historical preservation. With that, that's really good to know, because if we don't know where American bonsai came from, where do we ever know where it will go, right?
That's true.
And in that, and that leads me to a question that like I'd love to hear about where you think it's going from your experiences throughout all the things you've done. Where do you see bonsai in America going? Like, where do you want to see it go?
Yeah, okay. For me, I don't want to see it going. I mean, it's I don't do bonsai anymore. I mean, I have my preferences, but this is old. I'm just, again, yesterday's news.
Right.
Like if I don't do, I can't talk about it. I used to rail against talking heads.
Mhm.
The one guy wrote a book on wabi sabi, and I looked at his stuff. It's the antithesis of wabi sabi. This is the ugliest thing I've ever seen in my life. And when you get the call, we talk about wabi sabi. I don't even know what it means, but I know it don't mean what I'm seeing here. But I do have, people ask me my personal opinion. I says for a while I didn't like the way it was going, but it's just changing hands. And I knew that the Japanese American influence is greatly waning.
Right.
At their point, it was not even influence.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm talking about people want to preserve history. It's like, so I understand that part, and I do feel the field is because of the pandemic, it just really crashed, especially here in California. Didn't meet for 2 years. A lot of people had died off, whether Japanese American or not. A lot of the core of the old time group and the group right behind them, right before them, or me and about 5 of us were considered the next generation, or like Andy Shaner or like Ted Madsen. But we all on our own decided one thing: is like we will assist our teachers. It was our turn, and we could just move them aside. I think that's what's happening now. People, they get a little, I don't know, fame and glory, and then go out there and then you blurt their philosophies out, how they fix things. And my group, we propped up our instructors. At the end, they were just too elderly to really do a statewide convention demonstration or something like that. But in honor of them, we kept them out there as long as we could.
Right, live on their lineage, right?
Yeah, not as an embarrassment to them. They enjoyed being in that fame and glory, and we just let them have their time, and just try to be at the cost of our time. So the next generation after us, they're really, they're more centered on their careers, their reputation, and on the fast track. So it's like for yourself, if you had spent time with Dan, and is there a time where you move them out? Doing the same thing or the same program? Wow, should it be you on the program in Washington, or should it be him? And there are schools of thought on this stuff. He's kind of like, oh, he's been around a long time. We need new blood. I understand that. It's just if you can do it diplomatically, explain how things are going, and people don't even like the way your philosophy anymore. So ours was the next generation coming up was very talented. And the generation after that, I consider, like you mentioned, Michael Hagedorn or Brian Neal or Bjorn. I think they're like in between the generation after us and the generation, next one. But it's their time. And I'm not saying don't study with them and stuff like that. But if it's, if you have your own school, then you can kind of like one way. It's like, if you're out there nationally and give presentations and you're invited, great. But it seemed like for a while, the generation after us, they were like, demanding maestro fees. And then the conventions couldn't support that after a while. Like, it was a lot of things going, and then all the clubs, all the organizations went broke. It just takes one convention to lose a lot of money, and then you're screwed. Right. It's like everybody either volunteered or you get one headliner, and all the other people. We did workshops. Like John Naka did a workshop, but they just, hey, we'll just give you free room.
Wow.
Free registration. It wasn't like, here's 1,000 for you and 1,000 for you.
Wow.
But that's
makes you wonder how he made a living doing that, I guess.
Yeah, well, this was their hobby. They did other things, gardeners, landscapers. So this was just, but now it's a profession, so I realize it's much different. And I see it's changing too.
Yeah.
So, Hawaii has changed.
Yeah.
California is changing, and it's whether it's good or bad, who knows?
Right.
I don't know what criteria you use or what's good and what's bad. Doing for free, that was what we did.
Those
The
are
show.
nines.
We have a very popular event called the Shohin Summer every other year,
Mhm.
Central California. And we found out something. It's a cow pasture out there.
Mhm.
And the hotel was always leaking in the wintertime. This is a February event. You make it cheap, people come.
Mhm.
Just have the right, when we set it up, we said no instructor will get a fee.
Mhm.
You for your time.
Mhm.
Some people resented that. That's okay, don't come.
Mhm.
I was a workshop chair a lot of times. Well, do I ask John Naka or do I ask Harry Harrell or Masi Mizumi or
Mhm.
Ted Madsen, Warren Hill? I had like 30 people to choose from.
Mhm.
Masi Ishii from LA. So you don't want to come, okay, well, I'll just bring this person in. It was an honor for them to be, this is a Japanese American thing. It was an honor for them to be asked.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And the guy Masi Ishii was a very famous grafter. And then he has a nursery. He died. His Chikugo Inn down in Los Angeles. And he was so stunned and happy that I asked him to do a workshop. Because he was at the time the leading bonsai grafter in the United States.
Wow.
A lot of people studied with him. And I asked him, he was so overwhelmed. Wow. He said, well, can I, thanks for, and at the end, can I give you this really nice Kishu Shinpaku or Toigawa Shinpaku? It's probably worth $1,000. I should. Okay, thank you. He gave me all these nice things. Just because I included him and he deserved to be there in the first place.
Mhm.
But you got to be in that, there's certain in crowds and certain people, and you always get asked.
Right. Right.
So, well, it's part of the perks of setting it up.
That was.
Rawls place and get California juniper, right? So I need these plants a year ahead of time.
Mhm.
Sometimes you get these things that are California, they're still wobbling in the pot. So I had to bring it home, secure it, beat the heck out of it, make sure it's not worthy. So, well, I needed 10. He said, well, take one for yourself. Oh, all right, thank you. And I took 2 because I needed one as a spare.
Mhm.
If you have 10 in the workshop, you need 11. So I keep the spare too. Oh, thank you. I'm kind of scrupulous, but it's okay. It was part of the fun.
Yeah, that blows my mind because we never heard this, right? And being that we haven't been in California for longer than maybe a weekend for whatever we're doing, it's things I've heard, and I'm sure Ryan has heard too, that there are people, I'm in my mid-30s, Ryan's in his late 20s.
Okay.
And so like we're hearing these people our age in our groups that want to know the history because they want to know where it came from and where they can help preserve, or just maybe they want to try one of their trees in the Japanese American style, this naturalized,
benign neglect.
Yeah, right.
People remember it.
Right.
Yeah.
And that is such an amazing ability to articulate it all as you have, just because there's so much there. And it's just like, yeah, wow.
Thought that I did the unscrupulous thing, but it was just, I threw away a lot of historical stuff. Because I told when my plants are gone, I said, everything must go. I'll give you paperwork, books, and scrolls, everything. I had tools, and but no one wanted the old paperwork.
Wow.
So you put the unofficial word anybody wanted, no one came up, so I dumped it up. Like 60, 70 years worth of history there. But I did what I needed to do, and I gave everybody else a chance. And I used to be the keeper of all this stuff. I say, well, you should forget it, man. I did it for 40 years, and now it's time to other things I need to do.
You want to go to Hawaii and lay on the beach.
It's like this homemade Isayama. I had 8 clay pots, just terracotta pots. And then at the Fuji Bonsai Club, when I first joined, I was like a door monitor. And then I noticed that the plant sale table, there was like these 8 terracotta pots, for like $1 each. And no one bought them. I looked at them, and it has some calligraphy inscribed on the side, hand chiseled in there. That was from Home Isayama. One actually had a signature on there.
Wow.
For $1 each, and he was like the pioneer. So I bought them all, and then so I donated that stuff. I said, this is historically significant. Home Isayama was, calligraphy on here. And basically they dumped them out.
Really?
No one wants these terracotta pots. I says, oh, God.
Huh.
But, I could have kept them at home, but I thought I was going to do a good deed and pass along, and someone would want to know something about the history.
Right.
He is the person.
Mm-hmm.
He's based side of the bay as far as bonsai.
Right.
And one actually had his name on there. It was a chip in the pot. The comment was, pot has a broken part in it. No one wants that thing. So they threw it up.
Hey, all you fabulous listeners out there. This is your host, Kevin. Thanks for listening to part 2. Make sure to stay tuned for part 3 coming out next week. And remember, bonsai on. Today's episode has been recorded, produced, and edited by Kevin Ferris and Ryan Houston. Our music was provided by MIDI Cancer. To find more music from MIDI Cancer, check out their SoundCloud and Bandcamp pages. To find more information on the podcast, please check out our Instagram page, Bonsai Time Podcast, and our website, bonsaitimepodcast.com. To stay in touch with us, Kevin's Instagram is Kevin_Ferris, PNW, and Ryan's website is right2tree2.com. You can find these links in the description below. Thank you for listening, and bonsai on.